phone and said, get her credentials for tomorrow with no arguments. I went up there the next day to the Flight 93 First Memorial event. The second in command called me to his car, his finger, come here. Sat in the car for 5 minutes. I looked at him. I said, boss, what's the matter? He said, well, I said, are you worried I'm going to have another meltdown today? He said, yes. He said, are you? I said, no. He said, then get out of my car and get to work. I went there. I wanted to see the families. I had worked with United Airlines and family members. But more importantly to me, what did I want to see? Why did I want to walk that? See if I could see the angels again. Because still, I'm doubting everything about it. And so as the memorial service began, my recollection is that they sang Ave Maria. And I asked the question again, if that was you, I need to know. And that wind came again, went across the makeshift amphitheater that was all made out of metal, reverberated for a moment, and I really thought the thunder and lightning was coming next. So I said, okay. I went home that night. I already knew I was getting sick like a lot of the responders. I already knew I was having health problems. I was seeing 5 or 6 different doctors. I wrote what became one of the chapters in the book about the angels. I folded it in a book. As I said, my father's people were from Lebanon. My father was a great reader of Khalil Gibran, because that's part of their Maronite faith. And I tucked it in one of his books that my dad had given me before he died, entitled Jesus, the Son of Man. And I put it in chapter 12, which is about Mary Magdalene's first meeting with Christ. Because I knew if something happened to me, my daughter would pick that book up out of my little library, because she knew it was my dad's and it was my favorite one. At some point, she would know the story of the angels if I passed. The day later, how many know who one senior Ron Lenwood is? Okay. Well, Father and I are real close friends, and he was working with the FBI at that time. I called him and said I needed to come talk to him. And I did, a day or two later. And so I told him about what had happened that day. And when I was done, I was crying, kind of like with the music. And he said to me, so what's the problem? You saw something miraculous. You need to tell people. I said, Father, I'm not worthy. He said, you're not worthy? Why? I said, well, there's something I've never told you about myself that I'll share with you now, and I'll share with everybody. I said, I got pregnant and married at 16. I said, everybody made me feel like the next harlot of Babylon. I said, even the church got mad at me and told me that I wasn't being a very good Catholic because I wasn't going to give the baby up for adoption. I wanted my child. They told me at 10 years old I'd never have children. I kind of felt whoever the baby was going to be a miracle. And after I told him that, I was feeling still so ashamed of everything, and he laughed at me. And I thought, you might be a priest, but you're still a dumb man. You're laughing at me, you know? Like, you're laughing at me. I'm pouring my heart out, and in your mind, what are you listening to? You know, the sports or whatever. And he said, before you were even a particle of dust in this universe, God ordained this to take place. He said, think about that dumb kid that got pregnant and married at 16. Do you think it was of your making that you ended up at the FBI? And I said, no, I always kind of thought that was a miracle. And then I said, but Father, you don't understand. How am I going to be able to portray this? I was led to believe that like the saintly were the ones, people like Mother Teresa, people that have walked that path. He said, you have walked that path. You were police work for 10 years before you went to the Bureau. What do you think you were doing? And then he asked me another significant question. Do you remember who Jesus Christ was? And I looked at him and I thought, I went to Catholic school for 8 years. My parents read the Bible every night. Does? Yeah. And he said, do you remember who he picked for his disciples? The murderer, the thief, the tax collector. Do you know why? I said, no. He said, Jesus in his infinite wisdom knew that they would be more relatable to humanity than people that had been pious all their lives. It clicked a little bit in there. I thanked him. I went home. And for the next 6 years, I kept my mouth shut. I started telling people, a boss that I had, his name's Ken McCabe. Ken was the head of the Pittsburgh FBI, but at the time of 9/11, he was in charge of Quantico Labs. So that meant he collected all the evidence from all 3 sites, was the presidential contact with the families, the black boxes, everything he knew. He became my boss in 2002, 4 months after 9/11 happened. I believe that was a divine intervention too. In 2004, before he left, I told him what had happened. And he's Catholic. He believed everything I said and encouraged me to begin to heal. It took me another year to call headquarters to say I needed some intervention, because for those of you that don't know anything, there's a lot of responders that have been sick, become sick. There's a lot of us, it's all related to once the serotonin in your brain depletes, there's a pathology of illness that takes place. And many of us have it. They estimate over 85% of the responders and recovery workers are ill. Over 3,000 have died from the illnesses that are contracted from the onset of PTSD. And so I got very sick. And by 2008 was seeing probably anywhere from 8 to 10 doctors for different illnesses. And in that time period then, I invoked headquarters again, because when you have top secret clearance, you cannot go just talk to a therapist. They have to clear the therapist, they have to approve who you go to, because just in case you say something that's classified or sensitive, that it won't be shared anywhere. And so the first doctor, and I'm going to bring it full circle in about 3 or 4 minutes here. The first doctor was too kumbaya for me. I told her if she said it in an airy-fairy way one more time, I might lose it. The second doctor they sent me to, every time I walked in the door, she asked me if I was suicidal or homicidal. When I said to her if I was, I would take you out first and myself. She told the therapist at headquarters she couldn't work with me. And so when we got to the third one, she didn't want to work with the federal government. And so one day I called her and I told her that my mind was in a dark abyss. If someone didn't help me, I thought the darkness was going to overtake me and I would never see the light again. And she allowed me to come to her office. I ran it and raved for about 10 to 15 minutes. And when I was done and came back to realization of what I was saying and doing, she was sitting there smiling too. And I thought, great, the lecture's coming. But she merely said to me, if I tell you I've been collecting angels since I was 12 years old, do you think we could work together? And I knew I had been sent where I'm supposed to go. So I need to backtrack at this point. So 9/11 happens on Tuesday. The first anniversary, or the first memorial service is going to happen the following Tuesday. I asked for time off on that Saturday in between to go home so I could get clothes. Any ladies that have been around Somerset, you know I don't have to go anywhere, but there's a lot of shops out there. But I went home, and I have a brother that's a contractor. I had my brother bring a ground excavator to rip a hole in the corner of my backyard, and I told him we were going to build a grotto of the Blessed Mother in that place. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but it was in the middle of everything going on. He said, whatever you need, and they dug this huge hole. Don't know why I did it, but through December of that year, we built a grotto to the Blessed Mother. So fast forward back to 2008. I've been seeing the doctor for about 3 months, and I come out of what they call eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's EMDR for short. It's a form of therapy that allows all the trauma and all the memory to come out, and you speak it. And the doctor was crying. For me, it kind of put me in it's not supposed to make you hypnotic, but it does for me. And she was crying. And I thought, no, I've upset the doctor, the only person that's helping me. And I said to her, what happened? Because I don't remember things. But she audio tapes everything. To this day, if I go for a tune-up, I call it a tune-up, she audio tapes. She said there were 3 voices that came out. They were very prophetic. They talked about the arrival of the angels, and that the Blessed Mother had presented that day as well. And the voices talked about how the angels were sent to pursue the defeat of violence. Mary arrived as Queen of Angels to take those souls that desired to go home with her. So the reason for the grotto 7 years before now made sense. So over the next years, all this information continued to come out. And so now I'm going to bring it full circle. So in about 2010, Christmas of that, with 10 children, my mother has to if we don't have a main event for Christmas, she kind of house hops over the next couple days to visit. And she came to my home the day after Christmas that year. At that point, we had begun to put the book together. FBI has to approve everything, so it takes time. And she asked me a few questions. She said, first of all, is there anything bad in that book about me? I said, Mom, at 55 years old, I think I can take some, for my own behaviors. I said, no, there's nothing bad in that book about you. And then she asked me if it was about the angels. And I said, yes. And then she said something very significant. She said, what about the man with blue wings? The man with blue wings. And I started ranting and raving at her like I was a 5-year-old kid. And I asked her, how do you know about the man with blue wings? And she said, from the time you were about 3 years old, he would come down in the middle of the night. Daddy and I were watching Johnny Carson or Benny Hill or one of those late night shows, or we would be in bed. And we would catch you staring at us, at the side of the bed, and you would tell Daddy, the blue man with wings was here. He would go upstairs, look under the bed, open the walk-in closet, nothing was there, and you would insist that he was standing there in the left side of your room, smiling at you, with his wings spread and his beautiful eyes sparkling with blue all around him. And I got so angry with her. I said, I've been walking around for 50 years thinking that I had lost my blooming mind, because I tell people all the time I see angels. And that's how I knew that was Archangel Michael. That was the blue man with wings. And so I was hysterical literally and all of a sudden she said to me, I know you and I have never been close. She said, the sun rose and set on your dad, but he's been gone for a number of years. But I want to tell you, if he was here, he would bless you. Like the Bible tells you that you need the Father's blessing to go forth and give testimony. And I have to tell you, something inside of me just relaxed. And even though I knew that I was going to end up, I would lose my job, I might be sick, the FBI and the doctors, not the Bureau, and I will say in all fairness to them, most of the agencies initially, when the responders got sick, they didn't blame it on the work at Flight 93. But I knew that if I was going to give testimony, everything I knew was going to change. And it did. But I stand here telling you that I will go to my grave saying that it's what happened. Father believed me. Ken McKay believed me. And I think most people in this room will believe that there was something greater going on that day. The miracle was that plane had been in the air another 2 or 3 minutes and came down. It would have struck the most populated area of Somerset County. And so I'm going to end this by saying life has come full circle. I said it earlier in a teasing way, but if I'm not here to make anybody believe what I believe, and I'm not here for you to try and make me believe what you believe. What I'm here is to share a story about how I see God as love and light. And in one of the worst moments, as I said at the beginning of our history, I heard him, I listened, and I obeyed. Thank you.